On Daf 28 of Yoma, we get the story of Abraham's amazing servant, domestic Eliezer. Domestic Eliezer. So who was this guy? Well, on the very simple level, it says a guy named Eliezer from Damascus. But the Gemara says, no. Domestic is a word that's built out of two other ones, dole umashke, to draw water and give people to drink. So it's like draw out of a well and you give people water to drink. And that's what Eliezer did. On the literal front, he gave people drinks in Abraham's tent. But water we considered like Torah. So we're saying that he drew from the Torah of his master Abraham and he gave it to people so that they could consume it, which is a really fascinating idea. There's, I believe, kind of almost an implied criticism of Abraham in that description. There's something about the way that Abraham was able to be in relationship with God that didn't translate so easily to others. Eliezer, his whole way was, he was able to kind of get what his master was giving off and convey it in a way that the average people were able to be taking it in. So he became an intermediary. And I think we really see this in the story of when Abraham tells him to go and find a wife for his son Isaac, and you see the way he interacts with Rivka's family, Rivka being the ultimate bride that he brings back. You see the way he interacts. He's able to interact with them in such a way that they're able to see the divine hand in everything that happened. Whereas Abraham, it's kind of a difficult thing for Abraham to say which elements of a story actually reflect divine intervention. To Abraham, that's not his way of thinking. He sees the entire world as one unified whole, the entirety of which reflects God's hand. But his servant does not. And as you see him going over the story of the incredible events that led up to him leading to Rivka, he takes his own sense of wonderment, like, wow, something's not ordinary here. God's hand must be involved. And he tells a story in such a way that they say, oh, wow, this is really not ordinary. God's hand must be involved. But to Abraham, God's hand being involved is ordinary. It's a totally different thing. So sometimes we need to have intermediaries between here and there, between some of the wisest and everyone else. We might think that the greatest among us might be the greatest teachers, but it's not always the case. In fact, this very teaching was something that inspired me to write the Age of Prophecy series, because at first I was like, wow, who am I to be taking a Torah story and messing with it? And then I realized, there's a whole section of the world that isn't going to pick up the Torah and read it. Is not going to go through commentaries and take it apart and try to really unpack these stories. But they do enjoy reading fantasy books. And so maybe if I'm able to write a fantasy type book set in that world and I'm able to teach Torah that way, maybe some people will take in Torah in a way that they would not directly do so. I didn't need to be on the level of the great scholars of the day, just like Eliezer didn't need to be on the level of Abraham in order to be giving over the teacher of his master.